and welcome back to the Joyfully Free Journey. I'm your podcast host, Lacey Reeves. And today I have a great conversation with none other than my dad, Dr. Rian Montgomery, who is a medical professional of over 37 years. He's a minister, he's a dad, he's a granddad, he's a poppy. They call him Poppy, and one of the wisest people I know. We are going to have a great conversation full of his wisdoms, lessons that he's learned along his journey, both professionally and spiritually. So get ready to learn from one of the best people that I know, a person who has shaped me, made me, and has been one of the biggest cheerleaders as I've been on this journey of joy and freedom. Today, I have my dad, Dr. Rian Montgomery, joining us. And of course, he's the best dad ever, but a little bit more about who he is as a person. He was born in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where I was raised. At the age of 28, he took over his father's solo medical practice. He has practiced internal medicine for 37 years. He's also an ordained elder at More Than Conquerors Faith Church. He recently completed advanced minister training. Yes, proud daughter moment. And in his free time, outside of all the busy things that he does in ministry and in the marketplace in medicine, in his free time, you can find him serving those with limited medical accessibility in the Alabama Black Belt. Please welcome this week's guest, my dad, Dr. Rian Montgomery. Welcome, Dad.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Was that weird for you listening to me read a bio? Well, these are just a few things. Some people that know me know who you are, but very few people have gotten to spend quality time with you. And so this is our opportunity to glean from your wisdom. So thank you for being a guest.
Wisdom always flow as fast as you want it to, but we'll try.
That's okay. That's completely fine. I say this podcast is going to be what it's going to be, and it's going to be for who it's going to be for.
Amen. Amen.
Yes, sir. So, one thing that I like to do when we start a podcast is just get to know you as a person. Of course, I read the bio for our guest, but who is Rian L. Montgomery? What do you love? What brings you joy? And who brings you joy right now in this moment?
Who am I? When I think of myself, I still think of myself as the son, one of two sons of James and Alfred Montgomery. They were incredible influences on my life. I didn't need to take on my father's practice, though at the tender age of about 15, I said I want to be a writer. And my lovely mother told me that you can't write. And she was correct. I could not write. But I went on and decided to stick out medicine anyway. Went to college in Cincinnati and then did my training up in DC. We lived with my brother there, then came back to Birmingham. I took over his practice at 28. He was a well-known doctor here. I kind of, from my early years, was spent following in people's footsteps. I went to the same school my brother first integrated as the first black student in the Springs. And then I came back here and taking over a practice of my father, who was first doctoral staff in Alabama. So very well known, involved in civil rights a lot. So as I came back here, I had everything but the name James Jr. And unless I probably felt, there's need to step out of the shadow at some point in time, I kind of learned early on to embrace the fact that I was his son. Um, I find myself the more older I get, the more I quote what my father said. I've been practicing 37 years now, and time flies. It's amazing to me to think it's been that long. What brings me joy? Honestly, I've never wanted to have a ministry. I enjoy ministering to people, and by ministry, I mean talking about Jesus and how he's changed my life. What matters to me is that Jesus should be real and relatable
Hmm.
and be honest and frank with people. Not saying I've got it together because I don't, but I believe that even in my inadequacies, he's more than adequate for. So my colleagues said, how you get so busy? I said, purely the grace of God. And I'm not being modest. I mean that. I really do mean that. I think that I don't have any medicine nobody else doesn't have, but God has been very faithful. and I've seen that throughout my life, been very faithful. Life goes on strange journeys. I never envisioned my family would be as it is now, but what brings me joy is my children. My son, I have my son Michael. I have a daughter, Jeanne, and I have a third daughter. I can't remember her name, but I have a third daughter somewhere, Lacey. And they and my other family members, my other sons, Daniel and Lamar, and my three grandchildren. And of course, my greatest joy has been my wife for the last 28 years, Andrea Montgomery. I'd be remiss and just stupid if I didn't mention her name. So I'm gonna say that first because my wife and I, we've been pushing this thing up a hill for 28 years and continue to do so. So those are the things that bring me life with joy, actually.
Wow. That's, amazing. Yeah, I was gonna mention mom because she's gonna be watching this playback and be like, "Excuse me, where was my mention?" Yes, we love you, mom.
I need to stay married.
That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. As you were kind of reflecting on your personal journey, I really was thinking of what a trailblazer you have been and your family has been. That's been one of the coolest things about being included in the Montgomery family. Starting at the age of 11, but I think I might have been about to turn 10 or just turned 10.
Uh-huh.
However, I think, we were doing the blended family thing before it was cool. I think that has been a really fun part of our story that we can get into of what that looks like, having a blended family and what that was like for you as a dad. And honestly, that was probably my introduction to your tangible ministry. You were talking about practical ministry and making Jesus known. Honestly, it starts in the home. And so that is really cool how we can jump into that in a little bit. But listening to you reflect on your story, it is really an honor to be a part of this family, part of this legacy and heritage of so many trailblazers. But at the same time, I'm like, no wonder me and dad have always been like tight, always, because you're my dad. But like we really understand each other because we're the youngest.
Right. We already
We're
got
the
that.
youngest, and I forget that sometimes. It's like just little sibling. Sometimes we gotta step out and make a name for ourselves sometimes, and that is a journey. I know this has been a journey for me, and you've been the recipient of many a distressed phone call.
When I was in high school, my brother went to Indian Springs. He had poor vision, so it was a smaller school, and he integrated that school because there would be no blacks in that school at all. And of course, James was an excellent student because with his poor eyesight, he learned to listen and really had a photographic memory. So when I came there, I was not as studious as my brother, and despite some people calling me Little James. I remember a couple teachers saying to me, "You really aren't the serious student your brother was, are you?" I said, "No, I'm the fun one." But which I thought was funny. My father didn't find it amusing, but so it was always that idea of being somebody's shadow there initially. So I purposely did not go to the same college he went to. He was to the same college my father had gone to, and my mother said, "That's enough for going to Morehouse. So let's have you go somewhere else." And so that was my first opportunity to be out on my own in college, and I was thrilled to make my own friends and start my own community. My brother and I probably got closer as we gotten older, and we're just extremely close now. We talk probably 4 times a week, But, yeah, being the younger sibling, there's that shadow to step out of. Yeah, which I watched my youngest daughter do as she's coming to her own in the last several years as she become her own person. And very folk tell me now, "Wow, they're twins." Not anymore. They say the mother, but they don't call them twins anymore.
Yeah, it's rough there sometimes trying to find your own way and step out of the shadows, like you mentioned, of people who have some big names and it could be easy to feel as if we have big shoes to fill. But I do think that just in general, along my journey, I would just say that I am more grateful for my sister now than I was when I was younger. So much more grateful. I think when I was like the little sister, the younger sibling. We were 2 years apart in school, so many times we were in the same school, just in different she's a senior, I'm a sophomore. I'm a freshman, she's a junior. She goes off to college, I stay in high school, and then guess what? I went to the same college. I did not get that "let's not go to the same school" memo as your older sibling. I tried. I tried to find another school, but I really enjoyed Furman. But it was hard being in her shadow. I know you walked through this time with me when I was, like, kinda going I think I went crazy in college, but I do feel like I was feeling the growing pains a little bit more strongly of not trying to be Janae's little sister in college, but, like, literally, she is the only person I know in this state.
Yeah,
And that was hard for me because you guys aren't there, and so I'm in this new space, I'm in South Carolina, don't really know anyone outside of I mean, I eventually church became my community, very much more so than my collegiate peers, but before that came to be, like, literally anything she did, I kind of tried because I
yes,
didn't know what else to do when I got here, but I think just going back to the point of just being grateful, even though maybe our older siblings or our parents have been trailblazers. I feel like you're a trailblazer. Finding our own has definitely been a journey. And I think I mean, I will always say this probably every podcast episode. That's why I wanted to call it the Joyfully Free Journey. It was originally something else, but I added journey to it because I think mentally I needed to remember that, like, this thing is a journey. It's really not about the end destination. And you tell me that all the time.
yeah, it is. God is a
Yeah.
part of the process. Yeah, we have to get to the end point, but we get changed in the process of walking these things out. That's why he transforms us. And it's not so much about get to this point and now I've arrived, because I don't think I've arrived yet. I think I'm still in process. And when I think I've arrived, I see something come back up that I thought was gone or done, or something else that another area to change, and realize that he's still taking me through the process, and that's okay, because that way I'm not looking toward am I there, and you don't get caught up in your own ego of, oh, I've arrived and now I go back and tell everybody else how to do this, because in the scripture I heard, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. That pretty much sums up a lot of part of my life. I believe, but help the part of me that doesn't believe. And if I may say, I've been through to watch you come into your own, and most definitely do so. Become your own person, and yet still be close to your sibling, because there's no longer a competition. You are both your individual persons, and that's as a father, that's wonderful to see. I want you to know that.
Thanks, Dad. I
You know?
appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I think, going back to the journey, I think it's a journey of self discovery as well, right? I feel like it's like that in our faith journey and our journey of discovering our purpose. We're we're given this life, but it's kind of our responsibility to dig out what is going to be the thing learn about ourselves, learn about God, learn about what we enjoy, learn about the things that we don't enjoy, fail. Because
Yeah,
that was my issue. I feel like I didn't really want to fail. So if I don't want to fail, then that was preventing me from even trying new things. And I know that there were a lot of conversations that you and I had about, like, Lacey, God is a God of process. Like, don't try to rush to get to the end destination, because more than likely, once you get there, you're just gonna be like, "Well, what's next?"
yeah. Okay, I've done that now. Am I approved? And honestly, the best part of my relationship with Christ has been always been I never felt judged by him. I would set some standards for myself, but I knew in the midst of doing good or doing bad that God was always there with me, and that I wasn't like I had to put on a false face for Him. I put on for a lot of people at times, but not for Him, because I always felt that He accepted me as I was, and that was always very reassuring. But like
Hmm.
the wrong things I did, He wasn't there, and then I come back home like with my parents, and then try to pretend like I didn't do this, and this. But He was always there, and that was been a very reassuring point to recognize that I don't have to try to impress Him, that He can accept me as I was, you know, unconditionally. I mean, and that's taken on more meaning of, you know, even when I fail, He was still there. And He wasn't grading me on how successful I was, but more about how willing I was, you know, and trying
Hmm.
things. 'Cause you're gonna be your own person, and following your sibling footsteps only lasts so long, because after a while that starts to not. It's like a suit you have that doesn't fit. You start wearing it, but after a while you say, "This doesn't really fit me quite right," and you gotta find the suit that fits you, And when you do, you start to flourish. You start to find, they can help guide you that direction, but once you find where you wanna be, you start doing things like Joyfully Free. You start doing podcasts like this because you're now walking out who you are, and it meets a need in you and also ministers to others in ways you can't even imagine. So, that's my shameless plug of how much you doing this has impressed me because it has, that you chose to do this kind of thing because no one else does podcasts in my family.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it, and it has been fun to discover a passion that I think I always knew that I had a passion for communicating, but what did that look like? Because for a while, let's just be honest, that my first job was at a television station. So I was in the background being like, how can I get on the news? And then when I started working there, I was like, how can I get out? I was like, no, thank you. I do not want to talk about murder and all the things that get the headlines. I was trying to do what I wanted to do. Going kind of back to what you were talking about, we were talking about purpose and our journeys. So I would love to take a step back because you did mention that you wanted to be a writer at one point, and I remember you saying that, but just hearing you say it again reminded me that you probably had other interests outside of medicine. What made you decide on medicine per se? Did you feel pressure to go in the medical field, or was it really an interest of yours?
My father was my biggest hero ever in life, no question about it. My brother had limited eyesight, so he probably would have gone to medicine, except that his eyesight wouldn't allow him to do so. So he chose law. I then was kind of had said when I was very little, I want to be a doctor too. I changed my mind when I took a course in the plants, botany, a botany course. And I said, oh my God, this is the most boring thing in the world. I can't imagine wanting to do anything with this, and I don't want to do anything with medicine. Maybe and the writer thing was not something I really ever passionate about. I try writing short stories. My problem was I get the first page and get a very nice introduction and a big plot build up, and then I get tired. So my story would be about 2 pages. And my mother
Gotcha.
honestly told me, she said I'd be great as a physician with people. And no question, a lot of my interest in medicine developed because of my father. I probably didn't realize until I was actually in my third year of medical school and actually doing rotation wards how much I really enjoyed one, understanding what's going on with people and being able to talk to them about it. As time has gone on, I've just come to understand that, I really truly enjoy taking care of my patients. I enjoy sharing with them, getting them to understand what's going on.
Mhm.
Scripture called about setting the captives free has been the heart I've had as my passion in ministry and in medicine, because I consider medicine part of my ministry. The chance to actually share with patients what's going on and to be told by patients often. One patient asked me this like 2 weeks ago, "Are you a teacher?" I said, "Not really." She goes, "Well, you take a lot of time to talk about why this has happened to me and what I did that brought it on." I said, "Well, it seems to me that a better chance if you actually stay on the medicines and doing these things if you understand why are you having this pain, as opposed to take these pills and this. Because too often doctors talk in doctor lingo, and patients kind of sitting there left nod their head and say, "Okay, okay, okay." But if you can't communicate with patients so they understand what's going on, they're gonna forget half what you say. And always very thankful to my mother for that because she really was. My father made a point of not trying to press me to go to become a doctor. He said, "Just do the best whatever you're gonna do." But my mother really pressed said, "I think you'd be good in medicine." I think probably honestly, I listened to that as much as anything else in why I went into medicine. My father was my example, but my mother was my encouragement.
Oh, wow, that is beautiful. I didn't know that. I'm so glad I asked that question. Your father was your example, your mother was your encouragement.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. I didn't say that before either, so I'm glad I just heard it myself. I said, "Wow, that was actually very true." That's amazing.
That's very good. That's very good. Speaking of, we both have pictures of grandmom in our offices. So this is my beautiful grandmother who dad is talking about and is she's also in his office. Clearly she's an inspiration to both of us. How important do you feel that it is as a parent to speak life into your children? Like what you see them succeeding in, what do you see them like maybe failing in that you can help them with? and even, like, maybe help uncover gifts that they weren't able to see in themselves. And the reason why I'm asking this question is I remember we had a really pivotal conversation. It was a challenging conversation. When I tell people I used to get in trouble all the time when I was younger, people are like, "What? Who? You?" Yes, guys, I got in trouble all the time. We were always having challenging conversations. However, when I left the house and started out in my adult life, we've had more conversations that are like more character shaping, like, "Hey, Lacey, you might want to think about this." And I do appreciate a conversation that was quite challenging for me to hear. And so, could you speak a little bit as a parent of now adult children and also referring back to your mother speaking life into something she saw in you, just how important that is for us to do and receive?
I think it's critical. I think back to the scripture that says children are a gift from God. So I have to assume that God doesn't make mistakes, and it's not an arbitrary random process, but that He actually purposes the parent for the child. Now, oftentimes parents don't work that out, but they have the potential for that. So I really believe that my mother was uniquely suited to speak into us. And she was very, very intentional about making us feel one loved. We never got less than 3 or 4 cars on any birthday. And notes from my mother knowing we never had a question, wow, does mom really love us and they care about us for either my parents. And that brought about a security that meant we didn't have to worry about, am I good enough? Am I accepted? And my father at the same time is saying, you know, you can do anything that you put your mind to. Both my brother and I were young black guys in the '60s going to an all white environment. We spent more time in schools with white kids than we did with black kids. Because my brother needed smaller classes for his eyesight problem, but my father and mother both instilled in us that we were not better than anybody else, but we were as good as everybody else.
Wow, that's good.
And so early on, we didn't really think, wow, I hope I'm as smart as they are because, my mother's an English teacher. My father taught, but he wanted to become a physician. We were diagramming sentences way before I got in school and they were doing school. I remember I would come home with papers from my teacher I had in fourth grade, mother home, and she'd get out a red marker and she'd go back and regrade my paper and say, I'll give you a C on this. I remember thinking,
Really?
oh yeah, she did it often. And I thought to myself, well, I'm glad you're not my teacher.
Savage.
Wow, I thought that to myself. But I mean, so I had them pushing us all the time saying, you can go ahead and you can do much better than this. So neither of them was very satisfied with I did better than the rest of the kids in the class, but they kept pushing, but this is the best that you can do. And you don't realize when you're going through it because we're going through it. I felt like they were always on my back. I felt like nothing I did was good enough. That was very frustrating for me. But the same token, I also can recognize that down the road, I didn't question what I could do. I didn't question was I equal to the white students in my class because a lot of black kids thought, oh, I'm the best. I'm the best black in the class, and my parents were very big on. I'm not looking to be the best black. I want to say you're the best student in the class. That you aren't
Wow.
behind in any way, shape, or form. And so as my daughters will probably tell you, my son will tell you, I was very big on that what you were able to do
Mhm. Yes.
and that everyone's different. You, for instance, had an older sister who was very dynamic and opinionated and liked to be in charge of things. And
Me?
between
No.
my oldest daughter and my wife, you had early. I think early on younger, you were very comfortable going along with, and being
Oh,
part
yeah.
of going along with. And so I was very conscious of a need that for you to actually recognize that you had your own unique gifts. In some ways, gifts that they did not have that you have. I part of me always want to make sure that each person developed their own gifts.
Yeah.
They find out what they want to be and who they are, and not just go along. One of the challenges that I guess being the younger sibling both of us have is being people pleasers, trying to please those around us, to make people feel comfortable or get folks to like us in that regard. And so, it's a challenge to not be silenced because folk may not like what you have to say, and to learn to say this anyway. And my father probably taught me a lot about that. And so as I got older, I got more comfortable saying, okay, I don't want to just say something everyone likes, and I'm not really trying to be the smartest person in the class, but I do wanna be my own person. I don't wanna
Got
be
it.
follow behind somebody else because they said follow behind them. Because I really did believe that I wasn't necessarily the smartest, but I thought I had as fast a mind as anyone else did. A quote you've heard me say 100 times, "It's better to be born brilliant than rich." And one part of that was being willing to listen and not be the first to speak all the time. Said you learn much more when you listen to people than you do by trying to just say what's on your mind. You're better off listening to what they have to say and then thinking through what the best response is. It took me a while to learn that because I usually was very reactionary. I would get into arguments a lot early on. It took me a while. My brother was better than I was at it, but it took me a while to learn to be slow to speak and slow to listen. My father would not
That
tell you.
sounds like the scripture, man. That sounds like the scripture, Dad.
My father had a lot of these points that was scriptural, and he would not trip the scripture at all. Those are things that he was teaching me. When I got saved, that wasn't their favorite time of life for me.
That's so interesting because when you're talking about just being comfortable being yourself and even being not comparing yourself to others. I feel like that's something that we all must come to that point. Like you mentioned, being a younger sibling, definitely. I say I'm a recovering people pleaser. That's what I say. Hello. My name is Lacey and I'm a recovering people pleaser. Cause I mean, it's still a struggle.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
still a struggle to be myself and still be confident and comfortable in a position where I'm disagreeing with someone. But there's a way to disagree and to not be combative. And I feel like that's what you were saying about being slow to speak, swift to listen. Like, I'm going to take a beat, take a pause, count to 10 before I just unleash my thoughts on everyone.
Yeah, I'm reminded of an example when I was at my present job at Simon Williamson. I was on part of the management committee, and we're talking about whether or not to make Martin Luther King Day a holiday. And I was one of the only 2 blacks on the committee, and there were, 8 other white persons on the committee, male and female. And at first, I mean, I remember getting upset saying, why is there a discussion about this? Obviously, there'll be and I slammed my hand on the desk. And I remember watching their response. And I realized then in that meeting, I said, man, that was a mistake. I said, that didn't really accomplish a whole lot except to draw up old fears and stereotypes that some of them had. When we came back and met the next week, I remember having to be very measured in how I spoke and understanding that it was better for me to let them talk first and to influence the conversation rather than try to work against them. Because the bottom line point was I wanted everyone to decide to have their holiday, but I didn't want to have to try to browbeat some folk into it. So
Mhm.
I was able to come back and actually listen to them and ask them questions and share how it was important. And by the grace of God, we had unanimous vote. We all made that a holiday for the clinic. And I remember thinking then that, regardless of everything you've done, you have to avoid going back to the stereotypes that are so easy to be seen. The angry black man never accomplishes a whole lot. It sounds good, but it doesn't accomplish a whole lot. Martin Luther King was not an angry black man. Much as I admire work that other angry black men have done, I don't see that's really always made that many changes much. I think that being able to get people's attention and engage them works out much better than trying to uh force them to see it your way.
Right. That's really good. Speaking of we're recording right now in 2025, but this podcast episode will come out in 2026, probably around MLK Day. So that's a really interesting transition. Were you inspired by Dr. King? I mean, you are talking a lot about trailblazing and the really your dad initially trailblazed in the medical field. Your brother trailblazed in the educational field through integration. Did you ever feel pressure or did you feel inspired being a young Black doctor?
Early on, felt pressure because I was coming in taking my father's practice over. He'd been sick for about 4 years. Well, initially, you're not seeing his patients. You're seeing it's your own patients. You're seeing his patients. Majority of the patients were seeing me out, loyalty to him and, maintaining that, this is Dr. Montgomery's son. So I spent a lot of time, wanting to make sure. that not trying to fight that because I really thought that was a big advantage I had of having, not having to try to start from scratch, but to build on the trust they had in him. But it was also still trying to prove myself to him a lot too. I
Wow.
would talk about patience and early on, he'd say, "Well, did you do this, this, and this?" And I would get real defensive. Without one indicator. I think I would just sit there, and that's not what literature doesn't show that as much anymore. And, it took me about probably the first 6 months of being here because he was homesick, and I would call him on the phone and discuss patience with him. Uh, it took about 6 months or so to recognize that, to his credit, he never called and tried to insert himself. Every call came up was I originated the call and asked him what about this, this, and this. And so it took me a while to realize that he wasn't there, trying to advance himself more and show how smart he was. His only goal really was to make me the best doctor I could be. And once I finally got that through myself, and I'm not sure that that probably took was a good bad good bad good bad good bad response for over a while, but it became a lot easier to say, "Wow, I hadn't thought about that." I mean, the first time I said that to him, I felt like such a relief for saying that because before I felt like I had to say, "Oh yeah, I thought about that, but I didn't think it was necessary." And I was responding almost before I had a chance to hear what he had to say. It was like anything he said, I was going to go and react to and say, "Oh no, I thought about that," but that was and try to prove why I hadn't missed anything.
Hmm.
At some point in time, he said to me, "Say, if you didn't think about this, that's okay because I've been doing this for 30 some, for almost 40 years. You know, you're not supposed to see it like I see it." Yeah. And I mean, I didn't say anything when he said it to me, but I thought a lot about that. That okay, I'm kind of stupid here if I sit here and fight everything he has to say rather than listen to what he has to say. And I don't know one point in time that suddenly changed, but slowly I started, being slow to speak. So listen what he had to say and try to figure out, okay, what can I learn from this? And I appreciate that because he was very, my father was probably the smartest man I've ever met in my entire life, period. Period. You know, but he was, you know, and he thought he was pretty smart. Make no mistake. He didn't think that. But he didn't take his opinion. And he said, I'll tell you what to do. If you want someone to follow it, that's your business. He's like, I'm done. I mean, and he said that. He said,
My
I
God.
you follow my advice or you don't follow my advice, and you don't follow it, that's your loss.
That's
And
you. That's on you.
that's on you. And and really, unlike my mother, who would get very furious me to follow her advice, my father did not get upset. He was very comfortable, and to be honest with you, he often had very good advice. I understood that gets the wisdom came down the line from my father's side of the family, no question. Uh, the thing about wisdom is first seen not in what you say, but in what you don't say and what you listen, and not trying to have something to say, but listen to what's being said because that's how you get what I call a God perspective. As you listen to what other people are saying, you find out more about what's going on with them, as opposed to just trying to give a rebuttal and a quick response. Because
Mhm.
you don't change folk by debating them. You change them by engaging with them and recognizing what it is that's driving what they say. Because there's always something behind why we say what we say. Feeling about going into too much politics and your thing about the politics of our country and those people in charge. But I've always thought they probably believe themselves to be right. And two folk who are both people to be right can get a lot of anger and fight going on. But you have to
Mhm.
get a sense of that they're seeing from a different perspective. And if you have any hope of them changing, they have to begin to see your perspective.
The old adage is, correct. You catch a lot more bees with honey than vinegar. If you're just trying to get people to see your point, that is an easy way for someone to build up a defense
Yeah,
against you
exactly.
and just turn off. I mean, and then you lose influence. And isn't that really what we want? We want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be accepted for who we are, but oftentimes it's very easy for us in under the guise of passion to actually alienate people we are called to actually love and minister to and influence just because we don't want to be wrong
You
or
know,
misunderstood.
really in the advice giving business, patients come,
Hmm.
choice. They come and ask your medical advice, and some advice they take, some advice they don't take. And you have to recognize that you're more successful if you engage them to understand why you're saying what you're saying. But ultimately, you're giving advice to them. And
Mhm.
very frankly, they're paying for the advice they get, but they can choose not to come back. There's no agreement. They're forced to take your advice and forced what you say. You give them advice, and they either find that they can follow this advice, some advice they can follow, some advice they can't follow. Too many get upset that if you don't follow my advice, I don't want to see you anymore. But that's kind of funny. I mean, if that was the case, God would have turned me away a long time ago. Because there's some things we follow and some things we don't follow, or it takes years before we actually follow. And so realistically, they're coming because you get the best advice possible. You tell people to stop smoking all the time. Majority of them don't stop smoking, we tell them that. A small number do, but most of them don't stop smoking then. But that's okay because everybody can't take all the advice you give when you give it to them. You know, and
Mm.
so it's kind of egotistical to think, well, I've told you now, I'm not gonna say anything more about it. You say it over and over again. Because they can't. If they come back to see you, you're going to tell them things that over and over again. But you also have to, it also goes that same point about not trying to make them your friend. I remember my father told me a long time ago when I saw him say something to a patient, and the patient got furious and stormed out. And I said, "You would have made him mad. He may not come back." He said, "Well, it's okay because he didn't come in to make friends. He came in to get well." And my goal is to him things that will help him get well, not make more friends. He has friends at home.
And I'm loving how you have been so vocal with how big of an impact Granddad Montgomery had. I know you mentioned this before. He was a part of the civil rights movement in Birmingham, Alabama. Both my grandmom and granddad were. Dr. James T. Montgomery, he saw Dr. King. He was one of the doctors of Dr. King in when he wrote the letters in the Birmingham jail, and they marched in the marches there locally, and so that feels like a very big legacy, but I can say that, it's really interesting hearing you refer back to them because listen, my dad is on my podcast, and I may not have been birthed from you, but I'm very much shaped by you. And so this season or in this iteration of the podcast, I have really been personally exploring the idea of bouncing back. But I'm curious with this new mode of discovery that I'm on about how do you bounce back from a setback? Like, what does that look like? And how has it applied to your life? And one of those that we were talking about before is like, hey, you're a dad to three adult children, you have three grandkids so far, and you did not birth any of us. What was that like having a blended family in the 90s, raising kids that might have had some baggage and being an example that like now reflecting on the same way you're reflecting on your dad and your parents, I'm reflecting a large part of who I am is because of you. So like, did you ever see that for yourself as in your lifetime?
Absolutely not. I had never had any thought about, uh, other than having my own biological children. It wasn't a consideration, like, "Oh, I always wanted to foster parent." Never had a thought about doing that. Didn't cross my mind. It was, for me, when I was married, my first wife, she was almost 12 years older than me, I started to see a pattern here saying, I see you keep being attracted to women who not liking to bear children. But still, in my own mind, I was gonna believe God for it to happen. Ginger had a son, Michael, who I did legally adopt. And then when Jen and I parted ways, Michael ended up staying with me, and
Wow.
he had my last name, and that became just a natural part because his biological father wasn't really in the picture. When I met my present and eternal wife, Andrea, she had two little girls. I had a girl. I had a relationship with Lacey and Janae, my own relationship as their godfather. I'd always wanted to have a family. I wasn't like I had this goal and now so I'm going to decide who I have an interest in based on that. Both my first wife and with my current wife, I knew that I was attracted to them and I was going along with that. I did not come to them because they had children, but them having children was not a deterrent for me because I developed a relationship with children on my own. It was when somebody was singing the choir, at a church on Valleydale, And I came from work at the last minute and saw this person standing there singing the choir. I was walking back into church and I got there late. I remember God said, I was looking to see where this young Miss Lacey was singing, because only when not many black kids in school she was going to. But I remember looking to see where she was. I remember God saying, "Behold your child." And I don't often hear just these words out the blue. I hear God's voice often. That was the word that came out the blue. I wouldn't even ask them, "Well, where's Lacey? Where's Lacey?" I was going to behold your child. And I remember sitting, I was back to the church. And I remember I felt like against the wall. And I was like, wow, that's my daughter. I said, wow. And scripture says, delight in the Lord, and he'll grant the desires of thine own heart. That it didn't come as I expected. It didn't come as I planned. But nevertheless, I was son and the father of three children. And it was not difficult, to be honest with you. Michael and I built a relationship, and he actually stayed, with me, lived with me, maybe because the house is bigger, but stayed with me after my first wife and I parted. But I had a relationship with you and your sister, and never really felt strange about that per se. It is a challenge. Bringing a family together can be a challenge. To my wife's credit, Andrea's credit, Andrea never treated the children as these are my children, and you can't do this, this, and this. I don't think I would have moved forward in a relationship like that. Early on, even before we were married, I had a relationship with you all before we were married. When we were spending time together.
Right.
Being married, remember when we were told you all were getting married. Lacey smiles and now got me a dad. And of course, your sister burst into tears around the room.
Two different responses, 2 different responses.
But I did get a chance to talk to her, and she's, as she always was. Not that I don't love you, I do. It's just that means my daddy's not gonna come back. And I told her, I said, your daddy's always welcome here. Your biological father is always welcome here. I lied if I said there wasn't some challenges in having, a biological father to deal with. You push him to change your name, and I was not big on pushing you to change your surname from your biological father's name because that's a part of who you were as well. I did understand early on, and God spoke this to me early on that I was not there as a replacement, but a provision for a need,
A per
and that helped me tremendously. I mean, it really did. I mean, I remember hearing that. It just, like, changed a whole lot. 'Cause, I mean, it was never about, "Okay, I've gotta replace this person and act as if they don't exist," because that's neither correct nor fair, and this is a provision for a need. My conversation with your biological father early on was that you're welcome here. You're always welcome at home. So it was not what I planned, not what I expected, but it became exactly what my heart's desire was. I mean, then I came to realize that this is exactly what my heart's desire. And it's amazing the opportunity to share about the spirit of adoption I've had on different occasions with people and see how much that's impacted them by talking about my story. Not one I would have thought about, but it became something that I was able to share that, when people tell me, "Wow, your daughter is just like you." And even more so, if I picture my son, they'll say that he looks just like you. I'm like going, Michael will not look like me. But I understood the word of countenance. That countenance has to do with the impact you have on someone and how they are seen, that bad and different than how they look. That people see them than how different how they look. And that you begin to see people look more like someone because of the countenance and the impact, influence you have on their life. Again, that's that power versus influence. It's not biological seed, okay? If you have
Yeah.
blood transfusion, DNA match, I'm not, sort of God doing miraculous work, I'm not gonna be a DNA match. But the influence you have because of what you pour into someone has a much greater impact as time goes on.
That okay, I didn't expect you to end that part of your story with that, but yours that was honestly, that was a very great segue because I mean, we're talking about legacy, influence, power. And honestly, that's why I'm grateful. This is why I can be grateful for being Janae's sister now, whereas before I was not. Because before it was a power struggle. Like, I need to be my own person. I need to do this. I'm in your shadow. She never saw it that way. Was fighting the provision. You were literally just saying, I'm not trying to erase your biological father. I'm just trying to step in and be a provision for a need. And I feel like even with my own story, I will bring this back around. I feel like being in Greenville South Carolina, where I currently reside, away from family, physical, biological family, and literally relying on the community that God has given me has been such a stretch for me personally and my own personality and my preferences, but it's very much needed. I feel like the only reason I'm here in Greenville is because of my sister. If she wouldn't have gone to Furman, I don't think I would have gone to Furman. I don't even think I would have heard about the school. So
Exactly.
that's one reason that I ended up in South Carolina is because of my sister. And another reason I found the church that I ended up being at for years and years was because of my sister. She left. She left after about 3 months of me being in Greenville to find another church that became her spiritual foundation. But for me, I needed to get to South Carolina. I needed to get to be under that ministry. I needed to connect with that mentor, like, literally, dad, there are so many different divine connections, and I feel like if I would have been fighting for power and for control of my own narrative, I would have missed out on so many blessings.
Oh, absolutely. What you said is really that was powerful. What you just said was really powerful to me because if you had fought Jeanne's influence in your life and said, "No, Imma go somewhere else just because 'cause I'm not going the same place she goes to." So much of what your community being your church, your ministry, your being, ordained, at both, church iterations of your church you've been
Yeah,
at, it was birthed through that. And interestingly enough, you're right, she left a few months after you got there. It's almost that her being there opened the door for you to be there, and that became more of a home for you than it was for her.
correct. Right.
And the same thing is true here. I mean, but in relation with family, you start to develop your relationships and realize that it's called a blended family. Thankfully and gratefully, I never was called a stepdad because I never thought of myself as a stepdad. And my wife, I think, has played a major part in all of that for all of us. Is we never parented as, "Oh, well, this is I know my children better than you do, and you know really your children." Never heard that from her ever in life. And I'm a, and that's not true for a lot of people. But never
True.
heard that from her ever in life. So there
True.
was never a time where I felt like, well, I'm just kinda placeholding here. Or you asked me on several occasions that I feel bad about you not changing your last name to my last name, you know? Yeah, part of me would have said, "Yeah, it'd been great if they said, well, I wanna be Montgomery, not this, and this." But the same token, that would've been just like a momentary feel good, but at the same token, it would have been at the price of having to lose something else because your biological family, they love you as well. And there was never a need to say, well, make a choice and this and this. That's not fair because children children don't ask to be put in these situations. A parent loves a child more than a child loves a parent. And that's what it's supposed to be because the parent chooses to be a parent to a child. Whether you choose to birth them or you choose to engraft them into your own family, the parent chooses the child. The child has to accept the parent, okay? But the parent's role is to love the child. The child's role is not to make themselves, to cater to the parent. That's not their job. Their job is to love their children as they were loved.
Right.
The best example of how well you love your children is how free they are to love their own children.
Wow.
That's the best example of that. And so, yeah, I think that the impact you've had, you have children, but they transform you in the process.
Hmm.
You and Johnny and Michael have had a major impact on how I see myself different than I did before. Because you know, I've never been uncomfortable being a father, which is always interesting. But that they have anybody lots of children. I've never been uncomfortable being a father. I was very close to my father. Always felt that, and I've always really believed that uh, I was a provision for a need, and that means that I was going to be suitable for that need. That I was going to be, I was going to have the right answers necessary, and that I was never scared. Oh, God, I'm going to screw 'em up. I actually talked to a counselor about it early on. A counselor I told him early on, I don't want to screw these children up, particularly with you and John A. And this counselor, Mr. Ball, I won't say his first name, but wonderful guy, said to me, "Oh, you're going to screw them up. You just
Oh,
got to
yeah.
possible." And that was very freeing. That was very freeing for me.
Well, it's because 'cause we're not called to be. I think that's the thing, and I can't speak to being a parent at this moment, but We're not called to be perfect. Paul said it, and he said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." He didn't have it all together. I mean, I don't feel like we're called to have it all together. I think we put that pressure on ourselves. I think the impact is that I feel like you had, yes, as a parent, to young girls, like there's certain things you have to do while we're in the home with you. But I feel like our relationship grew when we left the home and we're able to see you as a person. Yes, you're our dad, but you're also a person. And when you opened up with me, I think I was like in college or maybe recent graduate, you're like, I don't know what to do. I'm trusting God just like you. Honestly, I think it was in the pandemic because I was freaking out. We're all freaking out. We're in isolation. And I'm thinking, my dad must know what to do. You're in the medical field during the pandemic, one of the scariest fields out there, direct contact with people, and you have nobody knows what's going on. And I'm asking you, well, what about this? And what about that? You say, you
Yeah,
do the best that you can with what you know or the information that you have, and when you know better, you do better or something like that. Is that what you say?
the best you know do right at that time. You can't,
Right.
hindsight is wonderful, but I can always say, well, if I'd known this, I would have done differently. But at the time, I made the best decision I could at the time with the information I had.
That's it.
And so I did, and that avoids a lot of regrets because people look back and say, "Well, I screwed this and this up." Well, I'm sure I screwed several things up, but God never told me that that His strength is made perfect in weakness. So
Mm.
even I fall short, He's always made it the difference, always, and that's my confidence that He will. That I'm going to do what I know is right because know to do it right and do it not as sins. I'm not sinning if I do what I know to do at the time. There's not a lot of guilt that comes along with that, which I'm very thankful for.
Wow. I'm just curious, looking back on your life, I know you said hindsight is 2020, and there are several things that you have learned throughout your journey, right? As a dad, as a man of God, as a minister in the field of medicine, right? What would you say to a person who is, un hesitant to take a next step because they're looking at your full life story? You've had all these accomplishments. Y'all, I didn't even talk about all the honorary certifications and all the acknowledgments and awards that you've received on behalf of your parents, like all of these things. So, big legacy. What would you say to a person who wants to have an impact? And no matter what sphere they're in, but they're just trying to figure out how to do that, how to walk in their purpose and have impact.
What I would say honestly is this, and I have this conversation with residents a lot. You know, you don't have to have an answer. You don't have to have an answer because God didn't tell you go figure out what the right thing to do is and go do it. You know, the Lord's prayer says, "Give us this day our daily bread," and that
Hmm.
means then that I purpose to be the best person I know to be today. Not the best person I should have been last week, because that's gone. I'm not gonna be that person again. Whatever I screwed up last week, I screwed up. But I'm gonna do the best I can today in what I'm doing right now. When I say God's got the process, I really do mean that. I'm not. It's not about I want to get here. And everything I'm gonna be driven to get here and here. Because if doing so, you miss the joy in today.
Hmm.
You can spend a lot of time, you know, living for tomorrow. That when I arrive there, then I'll be satisfied. But you won't. You know, you won't be satisfied. If it's financial, if I make $50,000, I'll be happy. I make $100,000, I'll be happy. You won't be. If you don't find the joy in the process of going walking out day by day, you're not gonna have any more joy when you get to that goal you thought was going to make you happy. Because no one makes you happy. You choose joy, but no one actually
Mm.
makes you happy. So you have to find joy in the process of walking through the day. When the Lord prayer says, "Give us this day our daily bread," that's part of the bread I want to receive every day. I, look back and tell someone, enjoy what you're doing. Talk to those people who are authorities in your life, the God-given parents, even the bosses that God has for you, because God will often help speak insight into your life, not answers, but insight into your life through them. Yet, the scripture says, "Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind," in Romans, okay? And so we
Mm.
have a freedom to be fully persuaded in our own mind. I can't tell you what your best career is gonna be. I never told you, Lacey, go start a podcast because I didn't know that. okay? And I didn't know what the best thing was gonna be, but I was very confident that as you pursue what was your heart's desire, you'll find out what God has for you. And that's less about getting it right than about being honest. I think
Yeah.
the insight to somebody is be honest with God. If you love something, tell him you love it. If you hate something, tell him, I hate, I don't want to do this. Be
Huh.
honest. I can handle it. He can handle your honesty. So often people are trying to be good and holy, but they miss the point that holiness is about is something to grow into. It's not about doing it right and I'm just gonna not do this, and this. You know, if I want to do something wrong, I want to be honest with God about it. Because I don't find willpower is a good way of resisting sin. I mean, it does not work. I mean, I failed that time and time again. So I mean, I would tell somebody just go day by day. You don't have to have the next 50 years figured out. Life has evolved and unveiled itself as I've walked through it. I marvel when I look back at 37 years now. I don't look back at all and say, "Well, I wish I could go back and do that over again." I'm extremely happy where I am right now. I
Good.
am more happy being 65 years old with grown daughters who are married, who I'm very proud of, a son I'm very proud of, and grandchildren with more grandchildren. I know coming on the road down the way. But I'm very happy where I am right now. I've been married to my wife for 26 years, and though we butt heads often, I would not want to be with anyone else as my life. So I'm very thankful to God that now we may be in an argument this evening. I say, my God, it's driving me crazy. But right now, I can tell you honestly, it is a joy to be able to say, I don't have a lot of regrets. I don't look back and say,
Good.
wow, I wish I'd done this differently. But I didn't have it all planned out or written out. I was trusting God to carry me each day through it. And I think that we trust God, He does the work. The last I'm gonna say about that, and I'll stop, is this. In the Old Testament, when Abraham had to make a sacrifice, God did both parts of the covenant. God did his part of the covenant and Abraham's part of the covenant. Abraham didn't have to live up to a certain standard. God didn't tell him
Mhm.
he would live up to the standard. He told him, trust me, be willing, put your trust in me, make a choice to put your trust in me. And even when Abraham screwed that up, God was still sufficient. And time again, all I've seen in my life is God is always sufficient. It's not about that I did it right or I was so smart and I was lived such a holy life and I was just faithful. Yeah, I've been faithful a lot. I've been unfaithful a lot too. Let's be honest, I have. But that's okay because He is so much more faithful than I am unfaithful.
That's really insightful because I was in hearing your conversation. It's like, yeah, it would have been great if at the time I did something different, but all of it has been part of your story.
Yeah,
And I always
exactly.
say the same thing about myself too. I mean, there are plenty of things because it's really easy to get on a platform like this and not just my platform, but when we're talking about ourselves, we're reliving our glories, we're living the highlights. And that's one of the challenges of our digital age with social media is like a lot of people want to put out their best foot forward. They're what other people call a representative, but there's beauty in the brokenness. There's beauty in the mess ups because that's where we truly learn. And from your perspective and just in sharing with what you mentioned, that even in the challenges and the failures, God has still proven himself to be good. I think that's the part that I'm grateful for to be in this segment of my journey as well. I'm 35. I'll be 36 my birthday. And I'm reflecting on 25, 26-year-old Lacey. I am so glad that I am not 25, 26-year-old Lacey.
For that. I remember what you really say. I liked her a lot. I want you to understand that.
Did you like her? Because she was so confused. She was like, what do I do? I don't know how to pay my bills. My medical bills went to the collection agency because I didn't pay them on time. I was learning real life lessons, guys. I was some expensive life lessons.
I know that, and that's okay. Because that's what life is. You learn new lessons, and you learn and you grow. But 26-year-old Lacey has led to 35-year-old Lacey. That's
Wow.
who you are right now, to the person you are right now. And having one of the great privileges you have in parenting is to watch your children turn into full blown adults. And God, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I look back at life, one of the greatest things you'll enjoy is actually watching them become their own person. You know, through the ups and downs. You know, I mean, I've been divorced. I can't tell you what if I could do it again. I want to get divorced again. No, I never plan to get divorced. But going through that process, God caused everything to work together for my good. He worked good for me. I think he would have done it a different way had I been more obedient early on than having to go through divorce. But he did cause that, even that to work to my benefit. I'm reminded of when Jesus turned the water to wine.
You better bring the scriptures, Dad. Come on.
He turned the water to wine. Mary said to him, "I want wine, and do what he says do." He said, "Woman, what do I have to do with thee? It's not yet my time." If Jesus didn't lie, I mean, it wasn't time for the first miracle. But because Mary wanted wine, God in heaven had to go and erase the entire chalkboard of creation and rework the entire plan of salvation. So that the first miracle, whenever it was, changed simply because Mary wanted them to have more wine at the wedding. And that's a representation of how much God loves us.
Hmm.
Even though Jesus never lied, so if he said it's not yet my time, it wasn't his time.
Wow.
But nevertheless, what God did just because Mary wanted this. Well, now that's the kind of love God has for us. That a parent has a child that says, I want this, and a parent of a child, they'll move heaven and earth to make it happen, even if they didn't necessarily plan for this in the first place. And that's the kind of thing you experience, you realize, and that reassures you that, wow, God loves me this much. He's not sitting there waiting to come down on me because I screwed up. But he's
Mhm.
there, my biggest cheerleader, saying, it's okay. Just step out there. Even if it's the wrong step, it's okay. I'm going to work it all for your good. And that excites me. To me, that excites me seeing that and sharing that with people. That's my heart. That's what gets me excited, if you will.
So, question now that you said this is what gets you excited, what excites you about your upcoming transition, maybe out of what you're currently doing, 9 to 5, and maybe something for the future? What do you feel like could be your next chapter?
Have no idea. I mean, I'm open to a lot of things. I know that God spoke to me about 6 months ago now that my time in medicine was coming to a close. So I've been people asked often, "You want to teach and do something else in administration of medicine?" And I got something from my brother, which he said he's been practiced law for 42 years and retired last June. And they said to him, "Maybe you want to go, see law school to be a adjunct professor." He said, "No, I've pretty much done law." And I realized that what God said to me was very freeing because I don't need to try to hold on to some aspect of medicine because as much as I enjoy medicine, I can't imagine anything I would rather have done. Excited about what God will open what door he'll open for me next. I don't have it figured out. I don't have it planned out. I used to be anxious about that. I did. I'm very much at peace with that. I don't know how much I practice. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'll be honest with you. It's having seen a lot of my contemporaries who are retired. I'm much more thinking about how much longer do I really want to do this. I'm not in a hurry to stop, but I'm excited about that something what will open itself up and what God will bring into my side of vision. I did a mission trip to Guatemala years ago. I didn't want to go to mission. And she was yeah,
Dad, yes, I admit I did drag my dad to another country on a medical missions trip. Yes.
and it had a real impact on my life. And again, it had a big impact on my life. That opened the door for me to want into the black belt because
Wow.
who are less fortunate, who don't get medical care. And, I really enjoy being able to go down there and we didn't see 25, 30 patients, but the people you get a chance to talk to who have not had medical care or anybody talking about their health. So that I really enjoy. So I'm not ruling out some component of medicine tied to that, but I'm excited for to see uh what God has for me next. But I also look forward to seeing what things open themselves up to possibilities going forward.
Well, I love that because that really is the beauty of the faith journey. And thank you for even just being so honest to say that you do not know. It is very refreshing to hear that, yes, you're coming up on a transition, but you're open to what God has for you. And I think that that is something that I can carry with me. And I hope anyone watching can. carry it with them too that we don't God moves when we have to give him space to move. If we have all of our plans stacked up, and yes, we can feel a little disappointed when our plans don't come to pass, but like, do we even consider to give God some more space so that he can actually write a story much better than the one that we could have even planned for ourselves?
Let me say this. One of the best examples I've ever seen of that, honestly, was this person working at a church as a pastor's administrative assistant
Mhm.
who left her job and came home with 2 little kids, 2 little daughters to raise, no other job in sight. Now, in my natural mind, I thought that made no sense to me whatsoever. I thought it would been insanity. But somehow this person, my wife, my future wife, Andrea, believed
Wow.
that God was telling her it was time to leave the church. If anybody asked me that question, I would have said, "No, this is a big mistake." You know,
It's a bad idea. On paper, it was probably not this
you need to
yeah,
find a job first. You got 2 little girls here is irresponsible, but she believed God enough that she's gonna leave there and God would show her what was next. You know, I always think of that because, to be honest with you, I'm not sure I would ever had I would have the, kahunas, as I would say, to do that. That I had this faith to say, "I'm gonna step out and just trust God and go home," when I did not know I had, the financial resources to go but so long.
right.
That's no, because to me, honestly, if you plan for retirement, you're fortunate to have, put things aside for retirement, then it's like, well, I'm not worried about I'm gonna get home and then say, oh my God, I gotta go start working at McDonald's nights, making ends meet. But she did it when she did not have, financial resources set locked in place and these answers made. It was really stepping out on faith. That was a real, in my mind, the classic example of stepping out on faith. When they're, either
Wow.
God holds me up or I'm gonna fall because I don't have a safety net down there below.
Well, it sounds like she needs to be my next podcast guest. My mother's story of faith is quite insane. When you talk about the gift of faith, she has it in spades. I honestly do not understand how she was able to do so many different things as a single mom of 2 young girls. So, when you were describing it, I was like, "Who is he talking about?" It took me a second to figure out who you were talking about. I was like, "Surely he's not talking about me." But you're right, you're right. That's yeah, she's quite an inspiration, and I cannot wait to have her on the podcast. Well, Dad, I want to wrap up with quick questions. What is one place that brings you joy? And 2 things that bring you joy? Because clearly it's your family are the people that bring you joy.
True, that's true. And my friends, I have some very good.
Yeah, you do have friends too. Okay, we can include them.
I always enjoy coming home. I always enjoy coming home. I really
Okay.
every day. This is it's a peaceful home, a place of peace. My cave I'm in right now is my man cave, and I have a sign that says "man cave" up there. But this is my place of refuge. I really find great joy in the time I get to spend here. This is place it's a place aside, but my home itself, coming home brings me joy.
I love that. What are 2 things that you find enjoyment doing or engage like or 2 hobbies or activities or things that bring you joy?
My greatest joy is honestly is trips I take with my family. That is hands down the greatest joy I have. One of the greatest blessings to me has been that my family has wanted to be spend time together.
That we like each other.
They like each other. So my son and my daughters have not one biological gene in common. And
Wow.
I've always attributed my daughter's open heart has been such a blessing to my son and have opened his heart up more and more. And so you would not know that they were not raised together. Uh, Seeing all the family want to spend time together and spending time together, is that's one of the greatest joys I have. Other than that, I do really enjoy. I enjoy my church tremendously. I enjoy being at my
Yeah.
church, and I enjoy my medical what I do in medicine at office. I enjoy that. Now I'm enjoy doing I enjoy doing less hours a day, but I do enjoy the hours doing that. I find I really enjoy talking to my patients. I do enjoy that.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I feel like I walked away with some things I didn't know, and then good reminders. So thank you so much for joining, Dad.
I could still surprise you some ways.
No, it's good. It's really good. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, and I love that we have this conversation memorialized. We always have these great conversations whenever we're talking through life things, but I love that we got a chance to actually put it on a recording so that other people can benefit from it. So thank you, Dad.
I really, cats. I appreciate that, and I've enjoyed it.
I'm gonna try to wrangle our family at some point
That's
and
good.
do a family one. So
I mean,
maybe our next one with multiple family members. We'll have a family trip here soon. So, but thank you so much for being a part. And for those of you guys who are watching, please don't forget to pursue the things that bring you joy and have the courage to live authentically free. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.